Good day, we are Group 6 and we will be discussing Exercise 16, Systematic Zoology 2, which covers phylum Platyhelminths, phylum Nematoda, and phylum Annelida. Just a brief introduction, the distinguishing feature of the phylum Platyhelminths is worms that have dorsoventrally flattened bodies. They are termed acoelomates because they lack a body cavity. Only one aperture leads into the digestive tract, hence the members do not have a full digestive tract. Next, nematodes are also known as unsegmented roundworms. They are said to be the most productive worms because they can survive in a variety of habitats, ranging from tropical to Arctic regions of the planet. They also have a body known as pseudocoelom or false coelom that is devoid of peritoneal membrane. They also have a fully functional and complete digestive tract. Finally, annelids are segmented worms with a body made up of a number of similar components known as somites, segments, or metameres. Peritoneum aligns the real coelom, or body cavity of these worms. These are referred to as eucoelomates. Their digestive system is a straight and entire tube with the mouth anterior and ventrally positioned and the anus posterior and dorsal. For part 1, we have to identify and label the parts of the specimen of phylum Platyhelminths. So the first specimen that we have is under the class of Acentrosomata and under the order of Triclidida. Its genus name is Dugetia with the common name of freshwater planarian. The first arrow is pointed to its eye spots, which are medial to the auricles. The next arrow is pointed to its testis, and the last one is the pharynx, which appears to be a clear and prominent tubular muscle. The next specimen of phylum Platyhelminths is Chaetosoma japonicum, which is under the cohort Trematoda and under the order Diplostomida. It is also known as blood fluke. For this specimen, you can see its gynecophic canal, which are a pair of folds. You can also see its intestine and its vitelline gland. After that is the genus Fasciola hepatica, which is under the cohort Trematoda as well, but under the order Plagiorchida. It is also called as the sheep liver fluke. As shown, you can see its testis, which occupies the posterior middle half of the fluke. There's also the lateral longitudinal vitelline duct. The next specimen under phylum Platyhelminths is the Taeniasolium, under the cohort Cestoda and under the order Cyclophilidia, and its common name is pork tapeworm. So as you can see in the specimen shown, you can see its testis. You can also see its suckers, its neck, and its proglotid. Here is another photo of the Taeniasolium. The first arrow is pointed to its rostellum, and the second arrow is pointed to its sucker, and the last arrow is pointed to its neck. Now lastly is the Taenia saginata or solium. It is under the cohort Cestoda under the order Cyclophilidia, and for Taenia saginata, its common name is beef tapeworm, and for Taenia solium, its common name is pork tapeworm. So the first arrow is pointed to its uterus, and then the next arrow is the testis, which appears to be dot-like. The third arrow is the genital atrium. Next is the ovary, and lastly, you can also see its vitelline gland.
For phylum Nematoda, first we have is Ascaris lumbricoides. Its classification is it is under class Chromadoria, order Rabitida, and a species of the genus Ascaris. It is also commonly known as the intestinal roundworm. In this picture, the sex of the first one on the upper part is female, while the second one below it is male. One identifiable trait to distinguish the two is how a male Ascaris lumbricoides appears smaller than a female one. Also, its posterior end is spirally coiled as we can observe. Next we have is Trichinella spiralis. It belongs to the class Enople and is under order Trichocephalida. It is from the genus Trichinella and is commonly termed as trichina worm. As we can see, the encysted larvae are embedded in the muscle. The larvae appear as small, spirally coiled worms in the striated muscle. Moving on, we have the Ancylostoma duodenale. It is from the class Chromadoria, under the order Rhabditida, and from the genus Ancylostoma. It has the common name hookworm. We can observe the mouth on its upper portion, which attaches to the mucosal walls of the small intestine through the buccal funnel with the ventral teeth found in the mouth. The sex of one on the left is female, whereas the other one is male. Their distinguishable trait in sex is that the male is smaller and has a bursa on its posterior end, which is used during copulation. On the other hand, the female is generally larger and its posterior end is pointed. Following this, we have Trichoris trichoria. It is under the class Enope, under the order Trichoridae, and from the genus Trichoris. It is generally known as whipworm. Aside from the smaller size, males are also distinguished from the females by their spirally coiled posterior end and the presence of spicule, which is used during copulation that guides the transfer of sperm cells to the genital pores of the female. Lastly, we have Enterobius vermicularis from the class Chromadoria and from the genus Enterobius. Its common name is pinworm or sitworm. Adults are easily characterized by the existence of cuticular expansions called cephalicalae at the anterior end of the body, which we can observe in this picture.
This phylum Annelid, which is more commonly known as a clamworm or a sandworm, have tentacles which trap and transport food straight to their mouths. They also have a head, which is very simple and hard to distinguish from their back ends unless looked carefully. Next is their parapodia, which they use for creeping and swimming. It is also possible for them to take part in gas exchanges because the parapodia contains a large number of respiratory capillaries. Next is the ventral cirri, which helps transport blood from the head to the tail region. We also have the class Polychaeta, or specifically a fanworm or feather duster worm. It has radioles, and an adult one typically has 40 radioles in its crown, which is covered by tiny, hair-like branches called cilia. We also have earthworms in the class of Clitellata. They also have a part called clitellum. This is a thickened glandular and non-segmented section of the body wall near the worm's head. This is also the same with leeches. This releases a viscid sap, which then the eggs are stored. For the leeches, they have a sucker on both ends of their body, which they use for their movement and feeding. Although the rear part is mostly used for movement and also anchors them in the host while getting a blood meal. They also have an annuli, which is shared among animals that have segmented bodies.
And that concludes our discussion. Thank you.